Bhagavatam. Today we're on the fourth canto, chapter number 24. I wanted to talk a little bit with you about the idea of prayer. What is prayer? Does God need our prayers? Why is prayer considered such an important thing? Right? So let's put the question again. I want you to really think about this. What is prayer? Is prayer something we do, for ourselves? Or is it something we do for God? Does God need our prayers? Is God just some, old man sitting on the throne waiting for us to adore him and say beautiful things and in that way get some kind of ego kick? What is the purpose of prayer? What is the point? The Vedas see prayer very differently than the Abrahamic religions. In the Abrahamic religions, well, let's start from the beginning. Abrahamic religions actually think that they are the only monotheistic religions in the world, but in fact, the Vedas talked about monotheism thousands of years before the Abrahamic religions even started. Yes, many people think that the Vedic culture, or Sanathan Dharma as it is called, is about polytheism, that there are many gods. But that's not actually true. Sanathan Dharma, or the Vedic literatures, they invite you to approach God in whichever way you want. If you believe that God is an energy that is everywhere, that's perfectly fine. You believe God is the universe or omnipotent, that's fine. If you believe that God is polytheistic, that there are many gods, that there is many paths to God, all right, try that out. See how that goes for you. And if you believe there is one God, one being, then there is a lot to be said about that too. In fact, this particular channel focuses on that idea. So the Vedic culture says wherever you're at, whether you're an atheist, whether you're someone who likes to philosophize, or whether you're someone who likes to feel that there is an energy and you're scientific in your thinking, whether you like to meditate or do yoga, whatever it is that appeals to you, there is a path for you. The idea is that nobody is excluded. Everybody is welcome. And there is a way and a process for each and every one of us, because each and every one of us is different and unique and special in our own path and in our own journey. Now, the focus in Abrahamic religions, when they pray, and this has been my observation, so correct me if I'm wrong, you're welcome to write in the chat or in the comments, depending on where you're joining. The focus has been to ask for help. You're suffering a problem, your business, your family, your health, so you ask for help. And then, of course, you do some bad thing and then you ask for forgiveness. And then sometimes you might ask for guidance. Which way should I go? What should I do? But mostly it's the first two from what I've observed. Again, this is my personal observation. On the path of bhakti, the path of devotion, the idea of prayer is actually to develop a loving relationship with God. In the Abrahamic religions, the path is that of, or rather prayer is used as a way of supplication, of confession, of thanksgiving and adoration sometimes. But on bhakti, it's really back to that idea of devotion. And devotion can be through songs, through chanting, through offering of flowers and incense and food. In the Abrahamic religions, you might find, well, I'm taking more the Christian idea. Forgive me, I'm not touching on any of the others. Sometimes people get more volatile, so I'm not going to deal with that. So just deal with where we can have an open dialogue. Most of the Abrahamic religions deal with things like mass or carols or sermons. Whereas in bhakti, and the path of devotion, it's about puja or worship, yajna, sacrifice, darshan, or seeing the deity. So these are some of the different fears. And the main thing I think that separates us is the idea that, or rather the main difference in the approach is that the Abrahamic religions seem to work more from a place of fear and awe and respect, whereas bhakti is based more upon devotion and surrender. So in bhakti, there are two main things that you'll notice. One is the idea of meditation. Meditation can be on breath. Meditation can be on a mantra. It can be on chanting the names of God. It can be on the pastimes, hearing different pastimes or lila, as we're doing here in the Bhagavatam, or in the deity or the form of God. Of course, you'll notice many of these are absent in the Abrahamic religions because they don't allow for a form. And God certainly doesn't have any pastimes other than creating the world. There are no mantras or names of God that they usually chant, though I think you might have in the Muslim faith, yes, there will be the names of Allah. In the names of Jehovah are not, I don't think they're chanted as much. And there is no concept of breath meditation, or for that matter of meditation as such. On the path of bhakti, the focus is on surrender. What does that mean? It means releasing the false ego, who you think you are, getting rid of that, cleansing the heart and mind of the impurities of this is mine, this is me, and becoming devoted, developing humility. These are some of the key ideas. And I think the focus is very important. The focus is on what can I give to God, not what can I get from God. Now, it is true that in what is called Hinduism, which is more the regular practice that you'll find in India, you'll find that most people who have not studied the Vedas, who have not really gone deep in learning from a guru and understanding the processes, yes, they will go to the temples and they will pray for things that they want. But as you become more advanced on this path and as you study and as you learn from highly evolved beings, they will discourage you from such practices and really focus you on being able to serve and give and surrender. So the 9 main paths or the main focuses of bhakti or devotion, I'll put them here for you to look at, are Shravanam, which means to listen to the pastimes of God, the names of God. Kirtanam, to speak about the names of God, again, the pastimes, the activities, to speak about God, and even the devotees, the people who are lovers of God. Smaranam is to remember God. And in fact, what happens is that as you chant and as you speak and as you start to remember, you know how our mind starts to record impressions? Maybe it's a song you hear on the radio and your mind remembers it and now it starts playing it back. Well, if you spend your time listening to and speaking about the pastimes, the name, the form of God, then that's what you're going to start remembering as you start putting that into your mind. And as you listen to kirtan, the names of God being chanted or sung, you can do that on beads or you can do that by listening to videos that are there where you have music, where people are singing kirtan. Then you have sevanam, to serve. How can you serve God? Either in the temple or a deity in your home or the devotees of God. Archanam means to worship. So how do you worship God? Through flowers, through offering the food that you eat. Vandanam, to glorify. These are all different ways. Ultimately, they lead to this. They lead to dasyam, which is to become a servant of God, to think of yourself as not only the servant of God, but the servant of the servants of God, to really develop that humility. And sakhyam, to become a friend of God or a lover of God. And ultimately, atma nivedanam, which means to surrender one's heart, mind, body, soul, everything you have and everything that you do to God. So I think that might be something that will help you understand the differences in the path of bhakti and devotion versus most religions, including, for that matter, the Abrahamic religions, as well as what is commonly called Hinduism. I must point out again that Hinduism as a term did not exist until the time of the Mughals when they came and invaded India, and later on the British made it the formal religion. But there is no such term in the ancient texts. No such term. Sanathan Dharma is the actual term used, and that means the eternal nature of humanity. Sanathan Dharma, the nature of who we are, who I am and who you are. What is our essential nature? Who are we? Who am I? That's where it begins. All right, so in the past we've been talking about King Prithu, right, and Archie, and how he and his wife eventually got liberated and went back to God. Now, what happened thereafter? Let's take a look. Actually, I need to go back one step. We also talked about how Indra came to the sacrifice, the yajna that Prithu was doing, and stole the horse. And then Prithu's son, who was the eldest son, actually got back the horse from Indra. Now the story is now about the son of Prithu. That's why I needed to bring that back to your memory. So King Prithu's eldest son was named Antardhana. All right, let's go back to that. Antardhana, he was named with that name by Indra himself, king of the demigods. And what Antardhana means, it's a mystic power to appear and disappear at will. Would you like to have such a power? To appear and disappear at will? Right. If you want, you just poof, you're gone. Nobody can see you anymore. And then to appear wherever you want to. Indra had that power. And when he saw that this boy, Prithu's eldest son, could have killed him for stealing the horse, but didn't, he blessed him with this mystical ability. So why is it that this eldest son of Prithu, Antardhana, did not kill Indra? You see, Indra was a highly evolved being, or is a highly evolved being. He is known to be the king of the devas, the king of the demigods. The demigods are the beings who are in charge of the universe, and they take care of all the affairs of the universe. God doesn't personally go about managing everything and dealing with all the nitty-gritties of 8 billion people on this planet, and I don't know how many billions and trillions more there must be on other planets. So, I mean, that would drive anyone crazy. And God certainly isn't, a person who's a micromanager getting into everybody's business, dealing with everybody's stuff. No, it's all delegated out to different devas, as they're called. So which is where people make the mistake. They think Hinduism or the Vedic system or the Sanathan Dharma is polytheistic. But no, the devas are living beings like you and I. Anksha. They are small compared to God, infinitesimal compared to God who is infinite. And they've been empowered to even create the universe, to even maintain it, to even destroy it. So in the Bhagavad Gita, there is a very interesting verse. It goes, Apichet suduracharo bhajate mam ananyabhak. So, sadhur eva samantavya samyag vyavasito hisa. What this is saying is this, that even if a highly evolved being, someone who has made a lot of progress, someone who has got unflinching devotion to God, if such a person performs an abominable act, it should be overlooked. Typically, we don't do that. Typically, if somebody has advanced spiritually and if they do something wrong, then we'll say, see, look at you. You too did something wrong. We'll criticize that person. What is the use of all your study and all your advancement and all the different practices that you've been engaging in? It's all a waste of time. I've been told stuff like that, so I know the lines. And I've heard them being said to other people as well. That if somebody advances spiritually, we are very eager to drag them down if they are anything less than perfect. And this is a tragedy, because a person who is on the spiritual path is not a perfected human being. We're in the process. I can and will mess up. You can and will mess up. We are humans trying to elevate ourselves. That doesn't mean we're perfect. In fact, even a very highly elevated person, a very highly evolved person, could sometimes fall down. I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen to people who took sannyas. That is to say, they renounced the world. They became celibate. They were supposed to be monks. They were not supposed to have anything to do with any kind of sexuality or the opposite sex or whichever sex, but they were not supposed to have any kind of sexual behavior. Not even so much as to look at someone with that kind of lusty desire. And they fell down, as in did what was not supposed to be done, although they'd taken a vow that they would never do it. This has happened to many. And here Krishna is saying in the Bhagavad Gita that one must consider that person to be sadhu, meaning a person who is evolved even despite their messing up. Sadhur eva samantavya. One should think of them still as a highly evolved being, knowing that they will come back on track, trusting that process. We're very quick to judge each other, and that is actually a huge cause of our own lack of advancement spiritually. I'd always loved this line that was in the Bible, judge not lest you be judged. I certainly did like to be judged, and I certainly didn't want to judge others if that's what it took, right? But on the path of bhakti, it is even more serious. When you judge or criticize or put down a Vaishnava, someone who is a devotee of Vishnu, that is a huge offense. It is called Vaishnava Parad, which means an offense to someone who is a devotee of God, who has devoted themselves to God. And if there is anyone who is most dear to God, it is those who have devoted themselves. And if there is something that is absolutely intolerable for God, it is to hear such people being judged by others. If you have a family member who you love very much, and that person is being attacked or judged or criticized, you're going to tell the other person, hey, don't talk like that about my loved one. I'm not going to tolerate that kind of talk. That's what it means to be protective. Now, God is protective about those who have surrendered to God. So keep in mind, one should be very careful not to judge people who are devoted to God, who are in love with God, who have advanced spiritually. It's a huge offense and should be avoided under all circumstances. So this is the reason why when Prithu's eldest son, Antardhana, could have killed Indra, the king of the demigods, he didn't, because he knew that Indra had attained that position through tremendous devotion, through tremendous spiritual practice and spiritual evolution. So therefore, he did not kill him. The same person, when Prithu left for the forest, retired, he became the king. Antardhana became the king of the entire kingdom. And this was a huge kingdom that stretched across the entire planet. Being a self-realized person, he was unable to extract taxes, punish his citizens, or fine them severely. He could not mete out the justice that is required. He was not able to keep the law and order that is required. And kings actually played an active part in this. It is said that when the British came to India, they were amazed at the kind of law and order there was and how simple, easy it was. That the villages and the people there, they formed their little panchayats, their little groups where they, meted out whatever consequences were there for people who tried to break the law and create disharmony. But when there were kings prior to all of that, it was the king who was the ultimate supreme court, so to speak. And you could go, if nothing else and no one else could help you, then you'd go to the king. So in this case, Antardhana was not able to do his duties in the way a king needs to. And so he gave up ruling of the kingdom to his younger brothers. See, he was a self-realized soul. He wasn't attached to this stuff. He wasn't attached to being a king. He wasn't attached to a regal and royal lifestyle. And instead of being a king, he engaged himself in the performance of devotional activities and elevating himself spiritually. You'll notice this theme here. Kings, when they become older, retiring from their kingdom, going to the forest with nothing, just the clothes on their back, and becoming completely devoted to God. That was considered the highest attainment of life, not how many millions did you make. The highest goal of life was not about trying to acquire as much as possible, trying to be as powerful or wealthy or famous as possible. The highest goal of life was considered complete surrender and devotion to God. So at the end of life, at least one did that. But in the case of Antardhana, he did it even when he was young. So thus, worshipping the Supreme Person who eradicates all fears. He attained the ecstasy of samadhi and went to the spiritual world. There's so much to be unpacked there. The Supreme Person who eradicates all fears. See, our life as worldly people is full of fear. The reason we have a home, the reason we have a job, the reason we do all that we do and acquire all that we acquire and struggle as much as we struggle is because we say, if I don't, then how am I going to pay the bills? How am I going to eat? How will I have a roof over my head? And I'm not saying that's wrong or bad. I'm just saying we live in fear. But one who comes to the place of complete surrender to God, either at the end of their life as a sannyasi or at any other stage, realizes that they're being taken care of and that there is nothing to fear. I think it was Christ who said the same thing to his followers. He said, you see the birds in the trees, they neither sow nor do they reap into barns, yet your heavenly Father provided for them. Are you not much better than they? He was trying to say the same thing, that if you truly surrender to God, you will be taken care of. And having come on that path, Antardhana attained the ecstasy of samadhi. Samadhi is where you experience this complete cessation of the ego, and you feel a sense of connection with the divine everywhere you go, in everyone, in everything. You feel yourself in ecstatic bliss. And then at the end of his life, he went back to the spiritual world. And that truly is the point of human life, is to come to this stage of samadhi, of ecstasy. This ecstasy is not a moment's joy that you get when you get something that you want. That's the way it is in the world. When we get something we want, we become happy. When our goals are achieved, when our desires are achieved, we become happy. When things go our way, we feel great. And when they don't, we're miserable. But this ecstasy is causeless. There is no reason. There is no cause. This is real ecstasy. It is there all the time. And all of us wish to have that. We would love to feel great all the time. Some people will even go so far as to try to be stoned or drugged, in some kind of narcotic substance. But the consequence they pay for that kind of fake ecstasy, that fake pleasure, that fake feeling good, is addiction so bad that they are now unable to function. They are unable to think. They are unable to do. And their condition goes from bad to worse. Ultimately, it destroys them. This, on the other hand, is an addiction like no other. It is an addiction to the self, an addiction to God. Ultimately, we all want addiction. We want to be addicted to something. It could be work. It could be another person. It could be our children. It could be a partner. It could be our hobby. It could be a substance, alcohol, drugs, whatever. But the highest addiction, and I know the word is not good to use because addiction is such a bad name, but there's a tendency, there is something that we want that really takes us out of our head and takes us into this ecstatic place. That ultimate seeking is the seeking for God. We all have it in us. We only just don't know where to look. And because God's been given such a bad rap, such a bad name, such a bad character, someone who punishes people and sends them to hell, people don't go in that direction. But if only they'd know that God was beautiful and loving and kind and adorable and ecstatic, then there'd be no hesitation. All right, let's proceed now. What happened next? King Antardhan, the one who was self-realized, his grandson was Bahirsat, and he was also known as Prachina Barihi. He had 10 sons with his beautiful wife Shatadruti, the daughter of the ocean. It is said that even the demigods were lusting over her, even the devas of the fire and of all different, she was so beautiful. She was so incredibly beautiful. So her sons, their sons rather, were known as the Prachetas. And their father ordered them to marry and have children. But they were kind of not so keen on that. They said, no, give us some time. We want to practice austerities. They wanted to travel and deeply immerse themselves on the spiritual path. While traveling, they came across a great reservoir of water. So now they had gone off into the forest, they'd gone off, and they're walking. Okay, they're not in cars, they're not on chariots, they're not on airplanes. They're walking, and they're walking, and they're walking, and they come across a great reservoir of water, which seemed almost as big as the ocean, so huge. The water of this lake was so calm and quiet that it seemed like the mind of a great soul. That gives you an idea, right? What is the mind of a great soul like? Calm and quiet. It's an incredible feeling when your own mind actually becomes calm and quiet. I used to think that was not possible. I used to think that only rare people could ever get to that. And I was wrong. A lot of times when I tried to meditate, my mind would get even worse and more agitated and race even faster. Those are the impurities that are inside us that are coming up and getting cleansed. And one day, by the grace of God, it happened that I was driving down the freeway and suddenly my mind became calm and quiet. It was the most incredible feeling. For half an hour, the entire journey I was driving, it was like that. I was like a witness watching myself, watching the road, listening to the music, and just feeling absolutely elated. Then I realized I've been telling myself this is hard. But I think I have it wrong all along. It's in fact easy. In fact, it's the natural state of who we are. This calm, this quiet, this inner peace is the natural state of who we are. What we need to do is learn how to slip out of the mental addiction, because we're addicted to our thoughts. We're addicted to analyzing and thinking and worrying and figuring things out, and this means that, and if he did this, then that means that. That's the addiction, the ultimate addiction. And then, of course, our mind beats us down and bullies us and tells us we're not good enough and what is wrong with you, and all that kind of chatter goes on in our head. The mind has got, like they say somewhere, 50,000 thoughts that are happening in a day. I don't know how they ever calculated that, but whatever it is, we are obsessed with our minds and thinking. And the fact is, it's not that I think, therefore I am. It's that I think, therefore I am not. The real self is covered, hidden by our thoughts. So learning to quiet the mind is essential. And I discovered that perhaps it's easy. Just like when you fall asleep, you don't have to try hard. You have to slide into that state. When you fall in love, it's not about trying hard. It's about allowing it to happen. It's already there, and it will happen. If you trust that what you're seeking, your soul, that inner peace, is already there, then all you've got to do is allow yourself to slide into it. Stop paying attention to what the mind is telling you. You can tell it, I'm not interested right now. Thank you. We will talk later. You can talk to it like it's another person. And then allow yourself to slide into that beautiful state of inner peace. It's there waiting for you. So it says that this lake, it was filled with different types of beautiful lotus flowers and beautiful birds. The trees and creepers on all sides of the lake appeared to be very jolly due to the sweet humming of the bumblebees, and the saffron, which was contained in the lotus flowers, was being thrown into the air. I guess they're referring to the pollen in the lotus flowers, but it appeared to be like saffron that was being thrown into the air. It appeared as though a festival was taking place. Now, as they were looking at this incredible beauty, they saw Shiva emerging from within the water with his associates. His bodily luster was like molten gold. His throat was bluish, and he had 3 eyes, which looked very mercifully upon his devotees. He was accompanied by many musicians who were glorifying him. The 10 prachetas, these 10 sons of the king Antardhana, immediately bowed down at his feet and offered their respect. This is the practice in the Vedic time, is to completely bow down, putting your head to the floor and offering respect to a saintly person in that way. So, the prachetas and Shiva, they saw him there at this point flying in the sky along with all his followers. And Shiva is just the most amazing personality. Shiva is not a deva, Shiva is not a demigod, and Shiva is not God. He is in this incredibly unique place between both. Shiva, it has been said, if you took milk and you added a little something sour into it, like amla, it would turn into yogurt. Yogurt is not milk. You see, milk can turn into yogurt, but yogurt cannot turn back into milk. And yet yogurt is nothing but milk. Therefore, Shiva is no different than Vishnu or God. And yet, he is not God. Nor is he a living entity like you or me, nor is he like any other deva. He is beyond all the devas. The devas are all tiny, infinitesimal beings, just like you and I are, just that they're highly empowered. But Shiva is in a whole category by himself. He is known as Vaishnavam Yatha Shambhu. That means he is known to be the greatest devotee of God. He is considered devotee of Ram. And he is also in this world in charge of the tamogun, the mode of ignorance. And he takes care of the annihilation of the universe when the time is right. But there is a lot more to the mysteries of Shiva, and we're going to learn a little bit more today about him. It is very difficult for living entities encaged within this material body to have personal contact with Shiva. This is what the Bhagavatam is saying. Even great sages who have no material attachments cannot contact him, despite their always being absorbed in meditation to have his personal darshan or to see him. Shiva is self-sufficient. He has nothing to aspire for in the material world. Yet he is constantly engaged in activities for the benefit of those in this world. He is accompanied by dangerous energies like the goddess Kali and Durga. Now, these are powerful manifestations designed to annihilate miscreants wherever they are in this world. A lot of people these days are worshipping Kali, and they don't really know what Kali is there for. Kali destroys the demons. Now, I don't know if they understand what that means. Demons means people who are averse to God, people who are creating a nuisance in this world, people who are acting against the free will of others would fall into that category. There's an entire chapter in the Bhagavad Gita devoted to the divine and demonic natures. When we say demons, we don't mean people with horns. We don't mean people who are red and with a tail. We simply mean that these are people who are of a certain temperament. And that temperament is disruptive to others. Whereas people who are of a divine nature want to support and help others. They want to care for and love others. Not so with those of a demonic nature, or asura. The word really to understand is sura is a person of S-U-R-A, is a person who is of a divine nature. In Western world they might say angelic nature. And asura is the opposite of sura. The opposite of that is someone who is disruptive to the happiness, the well-being, the peace of others. That's it. Simple. So Shiva is the protector of persons who are pious and gentle. He was pleased to see the prachetas, these 10 sons of the king, and out of great mercy instructed them on the absolute truth. Shiva said, and this is so important to understand, for those who think and believe that Shiva is the supreme Godhead, the supreme divine being, these prayers of Shiva tell you what Shiva thinks. It's not a question of what I think, what you think, or what anybody else thinks. It's what Shiva himself is saying, which is recorded in the Bhagavatam. He says, Bhagavantam Vasudevam Prapannaso Priyo Hime. Any person who is surrendered to the Supreme Godhead, Krishna or Vasudeva, is very dear to me. So first he is saying, there is such a being as the Supreme Godhead who is known by the name Krishna or Vasudeva. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. This was the mantra given by Narad to Dhruva. This is the mantra in the beginning of the Bhagavatam. This is the name of Krishna, Vasudev. Vasudev is Sarvam iti Samahatma Sudurlabha. Krishna says in the Gita that one who knows that Vasudev, Krishna, is everything, such a person is a great soul, a Mahatma. Samahatma Sudurlabha. Sudurlabha means such a person is extremely fortunate, one who has understood this. So Shiva is saying any person who has surrendered to the Supreme Godhead, Krishna or Vasudev, is very dear to me. You are as dear to me as God himself. You see, because these prachetas, these boys, they were surrendered souls, surrendered to God. And so he says, therefore you are as dear to me as God himself. For a devotee of God, or rather for God, shall I say, when Krishna says this, he says, my devotee is not my devotee. The person who is the devotee of my devotee is truly my devotee. So this same thing has been said by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, where he says, Dasa Dasa Anudas. We are to be the servant of the servant of the servant of God. Not try to directly come to God, but rather serve his devotees and his loved ones. So Shiva is saying the same thing. You are as dear to me as God himself, and I am as dear to his devotees as he is. I shall now chant a mantra which is transcendental, pure, and auspicious. It is the best prayer for anyone who is aspiring to attain the ultimate goal of life. Please hear it attentively. So these are actually now, what we're going to hear is prayers offered by Shiva in glorification of the Supreme Being, Krishna or Vasudeva. If you're really interested, it says here there is great benefit in being able to recite these mantras. If you're into Sanskrit and if you want to do that, this is Canto 4, chapter number 24. The prayers of Shiva, or the song of Shiva, Stotra. He then offered his respects to the Supreme Soul. Shiva offered his respects to the Supreme Soul, Paramatma, the Great Soul, who is most exalted, auspicious, and worshipable. He said, you are the origin of creation, all-pervading, the master of the senses, the sense objects, and the mind. You are the maintainer of the universe. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. So if Shiva was the all in all, if Shiva was the divine, the God was God, then he wouldn't be doing this. He's very clearly saying, you are the origin of creation. You as in Krishna, Vasudeva. You are all-pervading. You are the master of the senses. You are the maintainer of the universe, and I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. You bestow all benediction, all blessings. You are the source of all knowledge. You are the oldest being and the supreme enjoyer. You are the supreme cause of all causes, Krishna, and I repeatedly offer my obeisances unto you. Think about this term, the supreme, the cause of all causes. Like, everything has a cause, right? But what is the cause of all causes? Like, what is the original cause of everything? Like, somebody might say, okay, this world was created with the Big Bang. Actually, the Vedas don't agree with that idea. The world was created by a being, not a bang. And that being, or beings, very carefully planned everything. This is not arbitrary. This is not random. You can't create anything randomly. You can't create your phone randomly. You can't create anything randomly. Even if you want to draw a stick picture, a stick man picture, that's also deliberate, right? And the cause of even the ingredients in this world, like the earth, the substances of which this body is made. If you say, oh no, there's nothing, there's only atoms and molecules, well then all right, what created the atoms and molecules? What created the planets? How come they're round and not flat? How come they move around the sun in a certain orbit? And why don't they go out of orbit? Right? Why do the waves come only to a certain point and then go back? Why don't they just come in from the ocean, come in and just devastate us? Why does the temperature stay at a certain level? Why does our body temperature stay at a certain level? Because even if it went a little bit up or down, we'd be sick. How does that all happen? How is it that you eat and everything gets digested? We don't know. And what created this body and the DNA from which it is formed? It has 33 billion bits of information in it. Each strand of DNA, which is microscopic. We cannot even see it with our eyes, or even you need a very powerful microscope with which to be able to see it. 33 billion bits of information. What created that? Shiva continues, I wish to see your beautiful form that your devotees worship because it satisfies the demands of all the senses. What an incredible thing he's saying here. I wish to see your beautiful form. A lot of the Abrahamic religions particularly refuse to accept that God could have a form. And if you were to present a form of God, they would be very upset. They'd call it graven images, right? And they would reject that form. Well, then are you saying, therefore, that God is formless? Perhaps. That's what they're saying. I know that for those who are on the side of Vedanta, which is part of the Vedas as well, and which believes that God is formless, they too do not accept the idea of God having a form. And Shiva, who is known to be the person that all Vedantists actually worship, Advaita, followers of Advaita. Advaita means non-duality. And they say that God has got no qualities. He's sagun and nirgun. Nirgun means no qualities. Sagun means having all qualities. So to all of them, I place the challenge. How is it possible that which created form does not have form? That which created all these forms that we see in the world is incapable of having form. You're saying it cannot have form, right? Okay. Are you not perhaps placing a limitation on God? Or you might say, well, it doesn't have a form because God is infinite. God is everywhere. So how can what is everywhere be somewhere? And I say, why not? Our cell phones, they're able to tap into the entire internet, which is vast, which is all over the world, which is everywhere. And yet one little device like that can tap into the entire internet. If that cell phone can tap into the internet, can be personified, can be the personified version of the internet wherein I can see the internet, why can't God do the same? Why can't that which is everything become something? So, Shiva says, I wish to see your beautiful form. Not only is there a form of God, but that form is incredibly beautiful. And what form does he wish to see? The form that your devotees worship because it satisfies the demands of all the senses. This is the reason. When we see that form, it captivates us. The word Krishna comes from akarshit, that which attracts, that which captivates. God is so captivatingly beautiful that once you have darshan or you see God, you cannot take your eyes off. We have that experience with human beings, but God is millions and millions and millions of times more beautiful than any human being. He is the reservoir of beauty. So therefore, seeing that form satisfies the demands of all the senses. Your form, he says, resembles a dark cloud during the rainy season. As the rainfall glistens, your bodily features also glisten, like shining, like glowing. Indeed, you are the sum total of all beauty. You have 4 arms and an exquisitely beautiful face with eyes like lotus petals. a beautiful, highly raised nose, a mind-attracting smile, a beautiful forehead, and equally beautiful and fully decorated ears. You're super excellently beautiful on account of your open and merciful smile and your sidelong glance upon your devotees. Your black hair is curly and your garments flutter in the wind, appearing like flying saffron pollen from lotus flowers. Your glittering earrings shine. Your helmet, your bangles, your garlands, and your ankle belts, waist belt, and various other ornaments appear even more beautiful being on your body. Your shoulders are like a lion. Your abdomen has 3 ripples and is round like a banyan leaf, and it appears that the entire universe sprouted out of it and wishes to go back. Your symmetrical lotus feet, calves, thighs, and the joints of your legs are extraordinarily beautiful. Indeed, your entire body appears to be well built. See, if God can create the most beautiful people in this world, can God not be more beautiful than all of them? God doesn't have to be an old man. God doesn't have to be anything. God can be young and eternally beautiful, eternally youthful. Nava Yovana is the term said in Sanskrit. Eternally youthful, the reservoir of all beauty. Your 2 lotus feet are so beautiful they appear like 2 blossoming petals of the lotus flower which grows during the autumn season. Indeed, the nails of your lotus feet emanate such a great effulgence that they immediately dissipate all the darkness in the heart of a conditioned soul. What an incredible idea here. That the nails of your lotus feet emanate such a great effulgence that they immediately dissipate all the darkness in the heart of a conditioned soul. Imagine that happening to you. It is very possible. Shiva says so. Kindly show me that form of yours which dissipates the darkness in the heart of a devotee. You are the supreme spiritual master, the supreme guru of everyone. Therefore, all conditioned souls covered with the darkness of ignorance can be enlightened by you. Those who seriously want to purify their existence, who want freedom from fear, who are desirous of obtaining the ultimate goal of life, must always engage in meditation upon your lotus feet and take to this process of bhakti yoga, which is the easiest way to satisfy you and attain your abode. See what Shiva is saying is what Krishna has also said in the Bhagavad Gita, that one who devotes himself to me will come to my abode, will become freed from this cycle of birth and death. I promise you this, he says. Sarva dharma parityaja. He says, give up all your sense of duty, give up all your religiosity, give up all of that stuff. Sarva dharma parityaja. Give it up. Mam ekam sharanam braja. Just surrender unto me and me alone. Not to millions of gods and goddesses, not to anything and everything that you want, but surrender to me. Aham tvam sarva papevyu. I will release you, free you from all your karma and all your sinful activity. Moksha isha mima shuchaha. And I will give you moksha or liberation from the cycle of birth and death. This is my promise, he says. Shiva continues, the entire universe is manifested within the impersonal Brahman, the energy of the universe, right? So the entire universe is manifest within the Brahman. So the Brahman is the energy, the light of the universe, which spreads everywhere, and the universe is part of that. It's not everything. This manifest universe is part of the light. And this light is like sunshine in the sky. So the sky holds within it the sunshine. Not that it really holds it, but from our perception. That impersonal Brahman, that impersonal light, that impersonal energy is you. He's saying this to Krishna. He's saying this to Vasudeva, Krishna. For those who desire to merge with the impersonal Brahman, the energy of the universe, and be one with you, the path is very difficult. But for your devotees, devotees means someone who comes with love and devotion to God, you are easy to obtain. In the Brahma Samhita, which is spoken by Brahma at the time of creation, he says, Vedeshu durlabham adurlabham atma bhakto. So for those who use the Vedic process, who go through all the different yogic processes and all the meditations and all the reading and study and mantras and everything else, it is very durlabham, difficult. Vedeshu durlabham adurlabham. The opposite of difficult is easy. Adurlabham, Atma Bhakto, one who has from their heart and soul surrendered to God. Atma Bhakto, from the Atma they have devoted themselves to God. Not just from the mind and body, that too, but from their heart and soul they have devoted their life to God. For such a person, attaining God, love of God, and liberation from this world is easy. So what is the price one must pay? Surrender. What is that surrender? Of who you think you are, the ego. And who you think you are is only a thought. It's a series of thoughts perhaps, accumulated over time, but it's still a thought. And if you let go that thought, what remains is you. That you is capable of doing this, of surrendering fully. Mind not so much. The mind is very attached to the things of this world, so it cannot. Shiva continues, invincible time vanquishes the entire universe, but does not approach the devotee who has taken complete shelter at your lotus feet. The devotee whose heart has been completely cleansed of all material contamination by the process of bhakti or devotional service does not become bewildered by Maya, the illusions of this world which is like a dark well. Such a devotee is easily able to understand the intricacies of your name, fame, form, activities, etc. If by chance one associates with such a devotee for even a fraction of a moment, one will no longer be attracted to the results of karma or jnana, as in knowledge. In other words, one will no longer be attached or attracted to the idea of trying to do more and more in this world, trying to accumulate things, trying to enjoy things, or even of knowledge. Because knowledge is required to bring you to God, to the point of devotion, and then it loses its requirement. We can still keep inquiring and keep learning, of course. It can go deeper and deeper and sweeter, but the idea is to go to those depths. Your absolute authority, he's now saying to Vasudeva, to Krishna, your absolute authority cannot be directly experienced, but one can guess by seeing the activities of the world that everything is being destroyed in due course of time. So he's not trying to look at it in terms of creation, he's looking at it in terms of destruction, that everything is lost in course of time. Like you may say there's no God, it doesn't matter. Time will take you out, one way or the other. Right? You may say nothing created this world. Doesn't matter. Time will show you what remains. When you come to that point of death, so many atheists have seen things, and so many of them have realized, my God, I was mistaken all along. Even Steve Jobs at the time of his death saw some incredible things, and he said, it's so beautiful, it's so beautiful. He couldn't describe what it was, but that's just what he was seeing. And so many people at the point of death have experienced that. So no matter what you think, no matter what you believe, whether you agree or disagree, doesn't matter. What Shiva is pointing out is that when that point of destruction comes, when you lose everything, this body, this mind, your possessions, everything you were attached to, at that time there is often an awakening. The force of time, he says, is very strong, and everything is being destroyed by something else. Just as one animal is being eaten by another animal, time scatters everything exactly as the wind scatters clouds in the sky. All living entities within this material world are mad after planning for things. They are always busy with a desire to do this or that. This is due to uncontrollable greed. The greed for material enjoyment is always existing in the living entity, but you are always alert. In due course of time, you strike that person down, not personally, but through time, just as a snake seizes a mouse and very easily swallows him. Any learned person knows that unless he worships you, his entire life is spoiled. You are the Supreme Brahman and the Paramatma. So you are the energy of the universe, and you are the presence of God within every living being. You are the Supreme Brahman and the Paramatma, the Supersoul. Knowing this, how could a learned person give up worshipping your lotus feet? Even our father and spiritual master, Lord Brahma, unhesitatingly worshipped you. In fact, Brahma says, Ishvara Parama Krishna. You are the Param Ishwar, the supreme controller of the universe. Satchit Ananda Vigraha. You have a form that is eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss. So you have a form that is spiritual, not material, not mundane, not subject to birth and death, not subject to old age and disease. Sat Chit Ananda, eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss. That is the nature of the form of God. Shiva says, the entire universe is afraid of me as Rudra because I ultimately annihilate everything. Yet the learned devotees, who are devotees of Krishna and devotees of God, are fearless because you are their ultimate destination. My dear sons of King Prachinabhari, just execute your duty as kings with a pure heart. Chant this prayer, fixing your mind on the lotus feet of Krishna, and you will have all good fortune, for he will be very pleased with you. The Supreme Godhead, Vasudev, Hari, Krishna, there are different names he has, is situated within your heart. Therefore chant his glories and meditate on him continuously. This prayer was first spoken to us by Brahma, the master of all creators, a devotee of Krishna whose mind is always absorbed in him, who with great attention and reverence chants this prayer, will achieve the greatest perfection of life without delay. So with that, we come to the end of this chapter in the Bhagavatam. I would be delighted to hear your questions and see what you've been thinking, what you thought of all of this, and what you took away from it. All right, we have a lovely question here. To listen, speak, remember, to serve and surrender are facets of worship. Prayer, in all its forms, facilitates a way to connect to God as a devotee or ordinary person. My approach to God is as my closest friend, a loved one who knows me, my soul, in ways I have yet to unfold. That is wonderful, Seely. Thank you so much. Yes, Sakhyam, that was one of the 9 processes that I mentioned earlier. Whichever way you wish to approach God, as a friend, as a lover, or even just to serve God, the idea is ultimately Atma Nivedanam, with your heart, mind, body, and soul, to surrender yourself to God. And God is not the property of any religion. God is not the property of any particular path. It doesn't mean that if you prefer to worship Christ, you cannot worship Christ. Absolutely do so. However you understand God. Here the Vedas give you a clear roadmap, but you're free, whichever way you want. Right? So if God is your friend, then how do you relate to a friend? Develop that relationship. Develop that bonding, that buddy, that sense of, you're mine, I'm yours. That sense of, we call it apnapan, that sense of belonging. Must we seek the abode of the Supreme Being or God as the only means of experience, or the only means to experience pure love, peace, and joy? Is it possible to reach ascension of our heart and mind while in human form? 100%, Silly, absolutely. This is not that we attain to the kingdom of God at the end of death and here we suffer. No, first you have to experience it here. If you have not experienced it here, don't even look to something out there. It is here right now. It is here in front of you. The kingdom of God is here now. It is in every atom of the creation. It is within you. God is here. The kingdom of God is here. It is veiled with this world. Here it is veiled. When we say the kingdom of God, when we talk about the realm of consciousness in which God lives, there is no veil. There is nothing covering it. Here you have to step out of your mundane and ordinary life. You have to take a moment to breathe, and you have to take a moment to connect with the ultimate reality which lies hidden behind everything you see around you. God is right here, right now. Okay? Not in his personal form, but in the impersonal form. And that's all right. You can experience God there. You can also experience God within you. Along with the soul is the supersoul, the Paramatma, and within every other being. In fact, to be able to attain to the kingdom of God, one has to have experienced all of this here and now. Then only is one ready. I've often said to people who say, oh, they're going to go to heaven. I said, if you go to heaven the way you are now, you're going to make heaven into hell. You're going to mess up things over there. You've got to first perfect everything here now. That's why we're here. We're here to develop the quality of love and devotion that is required for us to not be a source of angst or problems when we go to the spiritual world. Imagine being there the way we are right now, being jealous of others, being angry with others, being egotistical. We'll create a mess. So yeah, you're absolutely right. And the idea is not to get out of here. We didn't come to this world to get out of this world. Okay? We're here in this world because we're here for mastery. We're here to really master consciousness, to choose first and foremost, and then to master. First we must choose. Up till now we might have been choosing the world and all the stuff of the world. First we must choose this path. Then we must devote ourselves to it, and we must completely master it. Right? What does mastering mean? 100% devotion. That's the only way to get successful at anything. If you want to be successful in business, you need to devote yourself. You can't do part-time. It doesn't work. You want to be a good artist, you got to devote yourself to it. You want to be good at anything, you got to devote yourself to it. If you want God, you got to devote yourself. That's just how it goes for anything in this world. She says, ringing true, kingdom of heaven is here and now. Love what you said to experience this here. Yes, 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 yes. Do not let yourself be deluded to think that it's only out there and not here. Everything in this world is an expression of God. Everything, every atom. From the atheist to the deserts, to the oceans, to the animals, to the birds, they are all manifestations of God. The energy of God. So this is the external energy of God, and then there is the internal energy of God. And that is a hidden secret to get to know God in an intimate way. That happens when we go into that place of surrender. And then from there, we are then led into experiencing the more intimate aspects of God, the internal energies of God, the internal nature of God. At that point, we enter into a place that is best described as madhurya, sweetness. Krishna is known as the origin of all sweetness. There's a lot to know about that. There is a lot to it. We'll go into it. That's more advanced information about the relationship between Radha and Krishna and the sweetness that lies there. In time, we'll get to it. All right, it's time for us to wind up for today, and I'll see you in the next week. If there's any last question, anything at all, let me know. Otherwise, we'll wind up for tonight. All right, I'll see you next week. Jai Shri Krishna, Hare Krishna.